welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Lieutenant Ethan Carver never cared for solo missions. He was the kind of man who'd survived wars thanks to his squad, the kind who thrived on the laughter echoing through the brief respites between firefights, the camaraderie that kept him sane when the galaxy turned to hell. But this time, Earth's fleet had thrust him into the unknown alone, aboard a small scout ship, the Lighthouse, and sent him to the edge of the Lantine system with a single order: survey the dust belts, scrounge for traces of rare fuel, and get back before the cosmic particle streams turn the sector into a giant incinerator. No one mentioned strange signals. No one warned him about what lurked in the void. Outside the lighthouse, the sky was a pitch-black abyss, speckled only by the faint blue flicker of a distant neutron star, pulsing like a dying lantern. Ethan slouched in the cockpit, boots propped on the console, twirling an old compass in his hand, a gift from his father, who taught him that tech could lie when you least expected it. Humanity didn't conquer the stars by trusting machines blindly. It took guts, instinct, and a stubborn refusal to quit. Then the scanner screeched a sharp, jarring sound that sliced through his steady breathing. He frowned, dropped his boots, and leaned toward the screen. A signal, not Morse, not Earth's comms frequency, but something alien, a rhythmic, eerie pulse, like whispers carried on a wind from some deep, forgotten cave. "What the hell is this?" Ethan muttered, fingers dancing across the controls to analyze it. The signal traced back to a rogue asteroid, less than 10 minutes flight away. The scanner showed no life signs, no manufactured metals, just a chunk of rock drifting in the void. But the pulse wouldn't stop, each beat a call or a warning. Ethan smirked. He didn't like mysteries he couldn't crack, but he wasn't the type to turn tail either. Humans didn't claw their way to the stars by running from the unknown, they faced it head-on, damn the odds. He piloted the lighthouse down to the asteroid, engines roaring as the ship punched through a thin veil of stellar dust. The surface loomed under the floodlights, black, glossy stone, jagged like a forsaken battlefield. His suit hissed as he stepped out, energy pistol swinging at his hip with every stride. He adjusted the wrist scanner, its red light flashing across his visor. The signal led him to a deep crater, where the rocks seemed to swallow all light. A faint vapor, maybe frozen methane, rose from the darkness, shimmering with silver streaks like a shredded galaxy. Ethan edged toward the rim, heart pounding as he peered down. There, amid the swirling mist, was a figure. Not a machine, not quite a living thing, but a girl, skin pale as crystal, hair gleaming like captive starlight, slender arms clutching a pulsing core embedded in her transparent chest. Her eyes snapped open, blue as cold flame, locking onto him. Ethan's breath caught, his hand tightening on the pistol instinctively. "You've seen me unclothed, human," she said, her voice clear yet chilling, cutting through his suit like an electromagnetic wave. "By the laws of the Klythera, you must join me in the flow of light, or the hunters will burn us both to ash." Ethan froze for a split second, mind racing. He'd heard spacer tales, wild stories swapped over cheap Martian whiskey, but this was real. She was real, and the threat in her tone wasn't a bluff. "Listen," he growled, voice rough as gravel. "I don't know what you're on about, and I don't have time for riddles. I came here to check a signal, not play by someone else's rules." She rose, movements fluid as water, barefoot on the stone without a sound. "Seeing me like this is no accident," she said, stepping closer, the mist coiling around her like a living cloak. "My core is the lifeblood of Klythera, and those who witness it must bond with it or be erased to keep it secret. The flow of light will unite us, or the hunters will come. They show no mercy." Her blue eyes flashed, and for the first time, Ethan caught a flicker of panic, raw, human-like, and far too familiar. He opened his mouth to argue, but a low rumble echoed from the void, cutting him off. The ground trembled beneath his boots, pebbles skittering into the crater like they'd been shoved by an unseen hand. Through the dust haze, he saw red streaks, angular ships, fast as lightning, streaking toward them from the horizon. The hunters, he guessed, and they didn't look like the negotiating type. Ethan clenched his jaw, hand still on his pistol, knowing a few plasma shots wouldn't stop what was coming. "Damn it," he muttered, turning back to her. You're serious? This flow of light, it'll save us? She nodded, eyes unwavering. It won't just save us. It'll make us something greater. But you have to choose now. The hunter's roar grew louder, their shadows stretching across the rocky ground. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down. He didn't know what he was stepping into, but he knew one thing: humans didn't survive by bowing to fate. They fought, they adapted, they won. And he'd be damned if he died on some nameless rock in the middle of nowhere. Ethan Carver stood rigid, gloved hand outstretched in the asteroid's biting cold, his breath fogging the visor in short, sharp bursts. Before him, the Klytheran girl Lyra stared back, her blue eyes blazing like frozen fire, the core in her chest pulsing faintly, a dying heartbeat of light. The hunter's rumble thundered closer, vibrating through the glossy black stone, each sound a hammer blow against his ribs, urging him to act. He sucked in a lungful of air, chest tight, forcing his mind to stay sharp amid the chaos crashing around him like a tidal wave. Fine, he snarled, voice raw and ragged from the pressure and the cold. If this damn flow of light can save us, do it. But mark my words, if this is a trick, I'll make you regret it, even if I have to drag you to hell with me. Lyra nodded, swift and sure, though her slender hands trembled as they brushed his. The core flared, a surge of blue light erupting like a tidal wave, piercing through his thick gloves, sinking into his muscles, his veins. Ethan felt it, a searing jolt, hot as a forge and cold as the void, tearing him apart and stitching him back together into something alien. His teeth ground together, jaw aching, sweat beading under his helmet. He fought to stay silent, to hold his ground, but then a deafening blast ripped through the void, shaking the asteroid and snapping the light's grip like a frayed cord. The hunters! Lyra cried, her clear voice breaking with panic. She yanked his hand free from the fading glow, the blue light dimming like a flame snuffed by a storm. The asteroid quaked, shards of rock tumbling from the crater's edge like a black rain, clattering against Ethan's suit with dry, hollow thuds. He snapped his head up, visor fogged, and saw them, the hunter's jagged ships slicing through the dust haze, red plasma bolts tearing the void apart, each shot a merciless declaration of war. No time to think, instinct kicked in. He grabbed Lyra's frail arm, hauling her toward a jagged fissure in the rock nearby. Move! He roared, voice drowning the explosions, shoving her into the dark crevice before diving after her, boots pounding the stone like war drums. Inside, darkness swallowed them, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint flicker of Lyra's core, a lighthouse on its last breath. Ethan panted, back pressed against the icy wall, lungs burning, hands still clamped on his pistol like it was his last tether to sanity. What the hell just happened? He demanded, voice cracking with adrenaline and fury. I thought your flow was supposed to fix this, why are we still running? Lyra sank to her knees, hands cradling her core, its light fading like a dying star. It didn't finish, she whispered, each word dragged from her throat like a weight. You fought it. I needed your will to merge fully, but you were afraid I felt it. She looked up, blue eyes sharp with reproach and desperation, cutting into his pride like a blade. Now we've only got moments before they find us. Ethan's brows knitted, a flare of anger surging through him like wildfire. Afraid? He barked, voice booming in the tight space. I just let you mess with my head, and you've got the gall to call me scared? He lunged forward to argue, blood pounding in his ears, but a cold, metallic clank from above stopped him dead. Steady, relentless like the footsteps of a machine that never tired. The hunters were here, closer than he'd thought. Lyra seized his arm, her grip surprisingly fierce for her fragile frame, jolting him back. We have to go deeper, she said, voice trembling yet resolute, like a soldier marching to the front despite the fear. I'm the last Keeper of Klythera. This core holds my people's energy, our hope, our lives. I was sent to protect it. The signal you caught was my distress call, but now you're a target too. She paused, eyes darkening like a sky before a tempest. When you landed, you triggered an ancient marker in this rock. To them, you're the intruder, and they won't stop until we're both dust in the void. Ethan blinked, mind spinning like a ship caught in a vortex. Wait! he said, voice taut, words clawing their way out. What? I was just scouting dust belts, fuel, that's it. I didn't sign up to trigger anything. But a cold dread slithered up his spine, sharp and ruthless. He remembered the odd shudder when the lighthouse touched down, a vibration he dismissed as engine noise. Damn it, he thought, sweat prickling under his suit. Had he really stumbled into a death trap without knowing? The sounds behind grew louder, not just footsteps now, but the scrape of metal on stone, a blade sharpening itself with every move. Lyra pulled him onward, leading him through twisting, narrow tunnels, his shoulders scraping the walls, leaving gouges in his armor. No time to explain, she said, voice urgent, nearly shouting over the pursuit. We have to reach your ship before they destroy it, it's our only shot. Her legs faltered, but she pressed on, her core's light flickering like a candle in the wind. They burst around a corner, Ethan's breath scorching his throat, heart hammering like it'd break his ribs. But the darkness ahead thickened, and a towering shape emerged, a hunter, a wall of gleaming metal reflecting Lyra's faint glow, its red eyes blazing like twin infernos. Ethan snapped his pistol up, firing on instinct, plasma bolts screaming through the air, but they barely scratched its armor, like rain on a fortress. The hunter tilted its head, eyes flashing, and a metal arm swung at them, swift as a guillotine. Run! Lyra screamed, voice shattering, yanking him into a narrower side passage. They sprinted, metal crashing against stone inches behind, the heat of its engines singeing Ethan's neck. He gritted his teeth, sweat stinging his eyes. But as they ran, a chilling thought sliced through his mind, sharp and brutal. If he was the intruder, if his death could end this hunt, was Lyra hiding that? Would she trade his life to save her own? The cave twisted into a lethal maze, its narrow, winding paths like the shriveled veins of some monstrous beast, ready to crush Ethan and Lyra in its dark embrace. The hunter's metallic footsteps echoed behind, steady and cold, a relentless drumbeat of doom pounding against Ethan's racing pulse. He ran flat out, heavy boots slamming the stone with thunderous thuds, breath searing his lungs, fogging his visor in frantic bursts. His hand gripped Lyra's fragile arm, feeling like he was holding a brittle twig, but he wouldn't let go, couldn't let go. Her core's light flickered weakly, dimming with every step, each faltering stride dragging her closer to collapse. How much farther? He roared, voice hoarse, eyes locked on the blackness ahead, where the cave's faint outlines offered a slim thread of hope. Close! Lyra gasped, words breaking apart, squeezed from her throat like they were her last. I can feel your ship, through the rock. But her voice faded, frail as a breeze through cracked stone, and Ethan knew she was hiding pain. He clenched his jaw, teeth grinding, refusing to imagine her crumpling here, on the razor's edge of survival. Her legs wobbled, yet she ran, slender hands clinging to him like a lifeline. He glanced at her, saw those blue eyes clouding, their fire fading like a star on the brink, and a cold knot tightened in his chest. What would he do if she fell? They rounded a bend, the wall scraping his shoulder, carving fresh scars into his suit. A dim glow broke through ahead, the asteroid's surface, where the lighthouse waited, a true beacon in this cosmic storm. Hope flared in him, fierce and hot, but a sky-shattering explosion snuffed it out. Through his fogged visor, he saw black smoke spiraling from his ship's position, curling into the void like a cruel taunt. No! He bellowed, voice raw, charging from the cave without a second thought, boots pounding in a frenzied rhythm. But Lyra's grip yanked him back, her surprising strength halting him mid-stride, nearly toppling him. Don't! She shouted, her clear voice slashing through his roar like a blade. They've set an energy field. Get close, and they'll spot us instantly. Ethan spun around, chest heaving, and through the haze, he saw red streaks, the hunter's ships streaking across the sky, circling the lighthouse like wolves on a kill. An invisible grid shimmered faintly, a cage locking down their escape. He slammed his fist into the rock, the crack ringing out, fury boiling in his veins like molten steel. So what now? He growled, voice breaking with rage and helplessness. We die in this hole? Sit here waiting for them to rip us apart? Lyra dropped to her knees, trembling hands clawing at the stone like it could anchor her. I can break it, she said, voice faint but steely, a soldier refusing to surrender. My core can send a pulse. But… She hesitated, blue eyes lifting to meet his, raw fears shining through human, vulnerable. It'll drain my last strength. If I do this, I might not make it. Her words trailed off, a confession forced from her lips. Ethan stared, a sharp pang twisting his gut like a dagger. He didn't want to admit it, but he cared not just because she was his ticket out of this nightmare, but because of the grit in those eyes, the same stubborn fire he'd carried through humanity's darkest wars. You sure? He asked, voice rough as sandpaper. She nodded, silent, and pressed her shaking hands to her core. Light erupted, blinding and fierce, surging through the stone like a tidal wave, each ripple a hammer blow shattering the dark. A boom shook the cave, the energy field around the lighthouse fracturing into shimmering shards, and the nearest hunters careened back, slamming into rocks with ear-splitting crashes of metal. Ethan didn't hesitate. He scooped Lyra up, her body light as a fallen leaf, limp in his arms, and bolted out, boots hammering the asteroid's surface in a relentless charge. But as he neared the ship, a massive shape rose from the wreckage, a new hunter, its red eyes locking onto them, casting a deathly glow across his suit. He fired his pistol, plasma bolts screaming, but they barely dented its armor, ricocheting like pebbles off a titan. Damn it! He roared, clutching Lyra tighter, her form a living burden, and hurled them both into the ship with every ounce of strength he had. He dumped her into the co-pilot's seat, rough but swift, and lunged for the controls, slamming the ignition. The lighthouse roared to life, engines howling like a beast unleashed, rocketing off the ground as the hunter's plasma bolt grazed past, scorching the hull with a sizzling hiss. Ethan yanked the controls, weaving through the asteroid field, hands white-knuckled, heart pounding like a war drum. Jagged rocks flashed by the windshield, close enough to feel their shuddering weight. He glanced at Lyra, unconscious, head lolled, her core a faint glimmer, pulsing like a final plea. Hang on, girl, he muttered, voice gravelly, grip tightening, sweat stinging his eyes. Humans didn't bow to fate, they bent it, broke it, made it their own. And Ethan Carver wasn't about to let some ancient machines dictate his end. The lighthouse screamed through the void, engines snarling like a wounded beast, the hunter's relentless pursuit trailing behind like vengeful specters, their red eyes flickering in the dark like hellfire. Ethan piloted with every ounce of skill he'd honed in humanity's wars, hands clamped on the controls until his knuckles blanched beneath the gloves, sweat streaking down his face, stinging his eyes. He wove through the asteroid field, dodging massive rocks with razor-sharp precision, each near miss a screech of metal against stone that set his teeth on edge. Beside him, Lyra slumped in the co-pilot's seat, her breathing a faint rasp, her core's light dimming to a fragile pulse, teetering on the edge of extinction. Hold on, he growled under his breath, unsure if he was talking to her or himself, a mantra against the chaos clawing at his nerves. The radar blared, red dots swarming too close for comfort, but through the fogged windshield, Ethan spotted a narrow gap between two towering asteroids, a shadowed lifeline in this deadly game. He didn't hesitate, slamming the throttle forward. The lighthouse plunged into the crevice, engines howling as he cut speed, cloaking them in the pitch-black silence. He watched the hunter's red streaks flash overhead, swift and merciless, their light fading into the distance like lost stars. Ethan exhaled, breath scorching his lungs, but relief died fast when a weak groan broke the quiet beside him. He turned, catching Lyra's eyes fluttering open, blue and hazy like a storm-shrouded sea, yet burning with a defiance he couldn't help but admire. Are we safe? She whispered, voice thin as a breeze through cracked stone, each word a struggle. Ethan nodded, resting a gloved hand on her shoulder, feeling her tremble beneath it. For now, he rasped, throat dry as dust. But they'll be back, they always come back. How are you holding up? He kept his tone steady, but inside, a sharp edge of worry gnawed at him, fierce and unyielding. Lyra managed a faint smile, lips pale and trembling. I'll live, she murmured, forcing the words out through the pain. She pointed a shaking finger toward the gap. There, a safe place. Ruins of my people. If we reach it, I can heal my core. Ethan's brow furrowed, a deep crease cutting across his forehead. He didn't like diving deeper into the unknown, but those eyes, dim yet blazing with hope, left him no choice. He fired up the engines again, the roar filling the cockpit, and guided the lighthouse through the crevice, slow and steady, a soldier marching through a minefield with grit and guts. As they closed in, an ancient structure emerged from the shadows, towering stone pillars, frozen giants carved with time-worn reliefs, buried deep in the asteroid like a secret humanity was never meant to find. Ethan landed, engines winding down with a hiss, and hoisted Lyra out, her arms slung over his shoulder, her weight barely a whisper. Inside, the air was cold and still, a tomb-like hush broken only by the faint glow of her core bouncing off the walls, illuminating strange etchings swirling, sharp lines telling a story lost to the ages. Ethan stopped dead, eyes widening as he traced the carvings, humans and Klytherans side by side, hands clasped, weapons raised against angular shadows that mirrored the hunters. "What is this?" he demanded, voice thick with awe, echoing in the stillness like a defiance of time itself. Lyra touched a relief, trembling fingers brushing the cold stone, her core's light spreading, slow and powerful, waking it from a millennia-long slumber. "Thousands of years ago, humans and Klythera were allies," she said, voice low and mournful, each word a note in a forgotten symphony. "We fought the hunters together, machines forged by a dead civilization, programmed to enforce order by annihilating anyone who crossed the line. The flow of light wasn't just a bond, it was how we reignited that alliance, tapped into a power buried deep." She paused, breath hitching, her core's flicker sinking with her tail. Ethan stepped back, mind reeling like he'd been thrown into a temporal storm. "You're saying humans knew you?" he asked, voice rough with shock and disbelief. "How'd we forget? Why is there not a damn word of this left?" Lyra turned to him, blue eyes heavy with a sorrow as vast as the void. "Because the hunters won," she said, voice soft but crushing. "They erased your memories, burned your books, shattered your history, left us stranded among the stars. But this asteroid, it holds that truth, the last piece of what we were. And now you've woken it." Ethan's breath caught, fist clenching until his gloves creaked. He opened his mouth to press her, but a deep voice cut through the dark, cold and resonant as a black hole's pull. "But the cost is steep, human." A figure stepped forward, tall, pale like Lyra, but with pitch-black eyes void of light, swallowing all hope. "I'm Kale, the keeper before her," he said, voice flat yet sharp as a blade. "And I'm here to warn you, finish the flow of light, and you'll lose part of your humanity. Your soul will fray, merging with her. With us you won't be fully human anymore." Ethan's fist tightened, knuckles popping, and he spun to Lyra, eyes blazing with fury and fear. "Is that true?" he snarled, voice trembling, each word a hammer strike against the silence. Lyra bowed her head, hands clutching her core, silent, but her silence screamed the answer. Ethan felt a chill race down his spine, not from the ruins cold, but from the realization that this wasn't just about a buried past, it was about his future, about what he might lose forever. Humans didn't bend to fate, they broke it. But this was a fight he hadn't trained for. Ethan stood rooted in the frigid ruins, Lyra's core casting faint light across his face through the visor, highlighting eyes ablaze with rage and confusion. The towering pillars loomed, their shadows stretching like claws, and the air hung heavy, thick with the sound of his ragged breaths. Kale stepped closer, gliding silently over the stone, his voice a low rumble that cut through the stillness like cracking rock. "You don't get it, human," he said, black eyes piercing Ethan, devoid of warmth. "The flow of light isn't just power, it's sacrifice. When your will fuses with her core, part of who you are dissolves, like smoke in the wind. You'll become something else, not you anymore." Lyra lifted her head from where she knelt, hands cradling her core, its blue glow pulsing weakly like a flame against a gale. Her eyes shimmered with a desperate plea, fierce yet fragile, a fire refusing to die. "Ethan," she said, voice quaking but strong, "I didn't mean to deceive you. I swear it. But if we don't do this, the hunters will destroy everything, not just us, but your fleet, your people, if they find Earth. She drew a shuddering breath, her transparent chest trembling, and pressed on, voice steady as an oath. I need you not as a tool, but as a partner. Ethan turned away, unwilling to face those eyes, fists clenching until his gloves groaned. His chest felt like a vice, crushing him under an invisible weight. He'd survived wars, stared death down with a grin, the echoes of gunfire and screams haunting his dreams. But this was different. This wasn't facing an enemy with a gun, or dodging shrapnel. This was losing himself, the pieces that made him Ethan Carver. He reeled back to Kale, voice a guttural snarl. Then why didn't you do it? Why'd you abandon her to this nightmare alone? Kale's dry laugh scraped the air, hollow and bitter, his dark eyes unflinching. I tried, he said, voice mechanical. And I broke. My will wasn't strong enough, it shattered under the flow's weight. Now I'm just a shadow, here to warn fools like you who think they're tough enough to take it. A distant roar interrupted, faint but ferocious, a storm brewing on the horizon. Ethan glanced toward the entrance, peering through the pillar gaps, spotting the hunter's red glow flickering closer with every heartbeat. Time's up, he growled, turning to Lyra, eyes hard but wavering. If I do this, what do I lose? Exactly what? Lyra's cold hands brushed his, voice a quiet vow. Memories, emotions, the parts that define you, your old days, your father's laugh, the sting of war. But in return, you'll be stronger, enough to save us, enough to fight them. Ethan inhaled deep, chest straining, the universe's weight bearing down on him, unrelenting. He stood silent for a moment, breath ragged, then nodded a sharp, soldier's nod, accepting the final order. Lyra pressed her trembling hands to her core, resolute, and light exploded, brighter than ever, a blue tide flooding the ruins, devouring the dark. Ethan felt that energy searing and freezing, piercing his suit, his flesh, pulling him into a boundless void. Lyra's mind unfurled before him like a living tapestry, her family consumed by hunter flames, red fire swallowing faces she loved, the crushing loneliness of drifting among the stars, her core her only companion, and her mission to guard it at any cost. Her pain stabbed through him, sharp as a blade, and he roared, a primal scream, fighting to hold onto himself, to keep her grief from drowning him. The flow faltered, light dimming like a smothered blaze, and Ethan crashed to his knees, slamming the stone with a dull thud, gasping through clenched teeth. Lyra crumpled beside him, core flickering, hands grasping at him like a lifeline. You resisted, she whispered, eyes glistening with tears, crystalline under the faint glow. I'm sorry, I didn't want to force you. Ethan shook his head, hauling himself up, hands braced on the cold floor, sweat dripping. Not your fault, he rasped, voice broken. I wasn't ready, couldn't let go of me yet. But the hunter's roar was at the doorstep, shaking the pillars like they'd tear the place apart. Ethan hauled Lyra up, hands shaking but firm, pulling her close. He glared at Kale. Can you do anything, or are you just gonna watch us die? Kale's faint smirk held no warmth. I can buy time, he said, stepping to the entrance, black light flaring from him, spreading like a shimmering shield. Ethan didn't wait, he dragged Lyra to the lighthouse, boots pounding the stone in a desperate sprint, diving aboard as explosions rocked behind them, Kale's dark glow vanishing in a storm of red plasma. Ethan knew it was a fleeting reprieve, a breath before the Reaper's scythe. As the ship launched, engines tearing the silence, Ethan glanced at Lyra, unconscious again, her core a silent plea. He gripped the controls, sweat burning his eyes, and a question gnawed at him, relentless as a drumbeat. If he couldn't surrender himself to save her, couldn't let go of what made him human, what would he do when the hunters returned, when there was nowhere left to run? Humanity didn't kneel, it fought. And he'd find a way, damn it all. The lighthouse hurtled through the void, engines whining like a beast on its last legs, the ruins crumbling to dust in their wake. Ethan sat rigid in the cockpit, hands locked on the controls, knuckles white, eyes glued to the empty radar screen, no red blips, not yet. The hunters had vanished for now, but he knew they weren't done, just lurking like wolves biding their time. His breath came heavy, fogging his visor, chest aching from the adrenaline still pumping hot through his veins. Beside him, Lyra lay limp, a fragile doll cast aside, her breaths so faint he strained to hear them. Her core glowed dimly, a dying ember, and a fierce, stubborn resolve surged in him. Humans didn't let their own fall, not while they still had fight left. He punched the comms panel, fingers hammering the controls, firing off an emergency signal to Earth's fleet with a flicker of hope. After tense minutes, static crackled, then a familiar voice cut through Colonel Marrow, his commander, voice deep and edged like a blade. "Carver, how the hell are you still alive?" Marrow asked, surprise cold and clipped. "Report now!" Ethan exhaled, tension easing a fraction, and spilled it all, the signal slicing the void, meeting Lyra, the hunter's relentless chase, the flow of light he barely grasped. But when he mentioned the ancient alliance between humans and Klythera, Marrow's tone shifted, icy and hard as permafrost. "You sure about that, Carver? That's not what we want to hear." Ethan's brow creased, a chill prickling his skin like frostbite. "Dead sure, sir," he shot back, voice taut but unyielding. "I've got proof a hunter shard, not normal metal, and carvings in the ruins clear as daylight. We need to gear up, need." Marrow cut him off, voice slicing the air. "That's enough. Send your coordinates. We're coming." The line went dead, static humming, and a dark premonition coiled in Ethan's gut, sharp and cold as a knife in the back. He turned to Lyra, her eyes fluttering open, wide with dread. "They don't believe you," she whispered, voice frail but piercing, tightening the knot in his chest. Before he could respond, the radar screamed, red dots blooming, not hunters, but an Earth fleet, bristling and aggressive, led by Titan, Marrow's hulking warship, its thick hull gleaming like a silent threat. Ethan slammed the comms, voice erupting with fury. "Colonel, what the hell are you doing?" Marrow's reply came cold, unyielding. "You've gone too far, Carver. That girl and her core are a threat, one we can't let stand. We'll take it, and you're the cost." Ethan blinked, mind spinning like a ship in freefall, breath snagging in his throat. "You're betraying us?" he roared, voice cracking with shock and rage. Marrow's laugh was dry, devoid of humanity. "Betrayal? No, this is protecting Earth. I sent you to trigger that signal, to let us harvest Klythera's energy, a power beyond anything we've got. But you chose her over your own kind." The words hit like a gut punch, the truth baring its teeth. Marrow had sold him out, feeding the hunters intel, trading Ethan's life for alien tech. He'd been a pawn, and now, expendable, discarded like scrap. An explosion rocked the ship, Titan firing a warning shot, a red plasma bolt streaking past, singeing the lighthouse's hull. Ethan dove into a dust cloud, hands wrenching the controls, zigzagging through shimmering particles, dodging fire with every trick he knew. But they couldn't outrun forever. Engines groaned, and Marrow's fleet closed like sharks on blood. Lyra grabbed his hand, her cold fingers trembling yet fierce, voice of fragile steel. "We have to finish the flow," she said, blue eyes locking his, burning with resolve. "It's the only way to survive, to fight them." Ethan met her gaze, saw that unyielding spark, and this time, he didn't waver. "All right," he growled, voice rough but firm, a soldier ready for the last stand. "Do it." Lyra pressed her hands to her core, unflinching, and light erupted, blinding and wild, flooding the cockpit like a blue tsunami, banishing the dark. Ethan didn't fight it, he let it take him, the searing cold energy ripping through his suit, his flesh, into his soul. Childhood flashed before him, golden days with his father, laughter on Earth's fields fading like smoke. War's pain, the crack of guns, fallen comrades blurred and slipped away, erased like old ink. But in their place, Lyra's strength surged through him, her razor-sharp mind, her unbreakable will fusing with his, roaring through his veins, his heartbeat. When the light faded, he opened his eyes, breath steady, and knew he wasn't just Ethan Carver anymore. He was part of her, she part of him, a new force, forged in fire and defiance, ready to tear the stars apart if that's what it took. Ethan snapped his eyes open, breath steady in the lighthouse's cramped cockpit, feeling like he'd clawed his way out of a chaotic, endless dream. The ship hummed around him, controls flickering, radar hazed, engines growling low like a wounded heart, but his body was different, sharper, stronger, a blade forged anew in cosmic fire. Every muscle, every nerve thrummed with power he couldn't name, a human soul tempered by something greater. Beside him, Lyra glowed, her core blazing blue once more, a living beacon, her eyes alight with vitality, sparkling like stars in the void. "We did it," she said, voice trembling with awe, each word ringing clear in the stillness. "You're incredible." She looked at him, slender hands quivering, but her smile was real, warm, fierce, unyielding. Ethan flashed a grin back, brief and jagged on his cracked lips, but it vanished as a red plasma bolt from Titan slammed into the ship, rocking the lighthouse with a vicious shudder. Metal screeched, alarms blared, and he seized the controls, knuckles cracking under the strain. "Save the praise till we're alive!" he bellowed, voice rough, cutting through the engine's roar, eyes locked on the windshield where Marrow's fleet loomed like a steel wall amid the asteroid field. Running wasn't an option anymore, that instinct burned away in the flow. He charged head-on, ship lurching as he pushed the engines to their breaking point, fear forged into a weapon, humanity's defiance in every move. The flow's power surged through him, hot and cold, a living current roaring in his blood. Lyra wasn't just a voice in his head, she was there, a presence guiding him, a partner honed by battles he'd never fought but now knew like his own. He shut his eyes for a heartbeat, inhaled deep, then snapped them open, hands lifting from the controls to grip the console like it was an extension of his will. No need for the ship's guns, they unleashed a blast from their fused strength, a blue beam ripping from the lighthouse, slicing the void with a howl like a storm unleashed. It tore into Titan, shredding its thick armor like paper, metal shattering in a deafening cacophony, debris glittering in the dark. Marrow's scream crackled through the comms. "Impossible!" before static swallowed it, a final note of defeat. But the fight wasn't over. From the shadows, hunters emerged, angular metal beasts charging from the dark, red eyes blazing like infernal torches, swift and unforgiving. Ethan glanced at the rearview, pulse pounding, but fear was gone, replaced by steel. Lyra's will flowed with his, seamless, and they struck as one. Another blue surge erupted, fiercer, faster, blasting from the ship like a supernova's wrath, piercing 3 hunters in a single blow. The ancient machines exploded, red light snuffing out, their wreckage drifting like dead comets. Ethan gritted his teeth, sweat streaking his face, a fierce grin breaking through. They weren't just surviving, they were winning, damn it. Then the void trembled, not from explosions, but from something deeper, older. Ethan felt it before he saw a pulse rippling from the distant ruins they'd left, a heartbeat waking from eons of sleep. Through the windshield, a portal yawned open in the asteroid field, a swirling vortex of purple light, vast and hungry, swallowing nearby rocks. Beyond it, he glimpsed silhouettes, massive ships, not Earth's, not Hunter's, but Klytheran, Lyra's homeworld. They stood majestic, crystalline hulls gleaming, radiating the fury of a betrayed race, ready to rain vengeance on Earth for Marrow's sins. Ethan's breath itched, mind racing as he realized the flow hadn't just saved them, it had ignited something far beyond his grasp. Lyra clasped his hand, her cold fingers trembling yet firm, voice soft but thick with emotion. "They're here for us, and for humanity," she said, eyes fixed on the portal, purple light dancing in her blue gaze like wildfire. Ethan turned to her, her core's pulse syncing with his own, a bond forged in defiance. He squeezed her hand, fingers locking with hers, strong and sure, though a heavy question lingered. How the hell would they face this? Through the portal, the Klytheran ships advanced, slow but unstoppable, a storm brewing on the horizon. He drew a deep breath, chest tight, the flow's power still coursing through him, now paired with a burden heavier than he'd imagined. He glanced at Lyra, saw the resolve in her eyes, and knew whatever came next, they'd take it on together. "Ready?" he asked, voice gravelly, a smirk tugging his lips, not from confidence, but because backing down wasn't human. Lyra nodded, grip tightening, her core flaring bright as a silent vow. They steered the lighthouse toward the portal, not fleeing, not hiding, facing it head-on, with all they'd become, the final reckoning hanging between the stars. The portal loomed between the stars, a swirling vortex of purple light spinning slow and eerie, ripples shimmering like a lake stirred by an unseen hand. Through it, Ethan saw Klytheran ships colossal, regal, their crystalline hulls glinting with starlight, carrying the wrath of a race scorned, a silent tempest poised to strike. The lighthouse hovered before it, engines humming faint, surrounded by the wreckage of Merrow's fleet and the hunter's shattered metal drifting like extinguished meteors. Ethan stood in the cockpit, breath slow, fogging his visor, eyes locked on the portal, heart hammering not from fear, but from a good deep certainty. Everything was about to change forever. He glanced at Lyra, catching the storm in her blue eyes, hope warring with pain. "What do they want?" he asked, voice rough as desert sand, cutting through the cockpit's tight silence. Lyra turned to him, her core pulsing in time with their shared heartbeat, blue light steady now, a testament to their fusion. "Revenge," she said, voice quiet but heavy, each word a stone dropped into the abyss. "Merrow wasn't alone. He spoke for those on Earth who knew us, watched us, tried to steal Klythera's energy for their own. Now they want humanity to pay, to erase what hurt us." She paused, breath shaking, then gripped his hand tighter, fingers frail yet fierce like a lifeline. "But we can stop them," she pressed on, voice firming. "We're the bridge, living proof our kinds don't have to be enemies." Ethan stared through the portal, the purple haze framing the Klytheran fleet's advance, deliberate and inexorable, mountains adrift in the void. Time was slipping every second, a countdown to war. "If we stop them, how?" he demanded, voice low, eyes never leaving hers, searching for answers in that blue fire. She smiled, sad but radiant, lips pale but resolute. "We tell the truth," she said, soft yet unshakable. "That we've fused, that humans aren't the foe, that peace is still possible." "But," her gaze darkened, a cloud across the sky, "I have to go back to them, to Klythera, to prove I believe it, to stand on the line." Ethan shook his head, sharp and fierce, a soldier rejecting retreat. "No way," he growled, voice ironclad. "I'm not letting you go alone. We're one, remember? Part of me and you, part of you and me." He pulled her close, hand locking with hers, the flow's energy surging between them, a bond of fire and ice. "We face them together, no deals, no splitting up." Lyra's eyes shimmered, and she nodded, a small, steely gesture of unity. They piloted the lighthouse through the portal, engines roaring as they pierced the purple swirl, stepping into Klythera's realm. The sky here was alien black as pitch, studded with countless stars like gems on velvet. Before them, a council of Klytheran leaders waited, towering figures with crystalline skin, cores blazing like living flames, eyes sharp enough to cut through time. Ethan stepped out, steadying Lyra beside him, hand in hand, and spoke not as an earthling or a Klytheran, but as something new, his voice booming in the stillness. "We're proof our kinds can stand together," he declared, each word a hammer against fate. "Don't destroy that for fools like Merrow, greedy, short-sighted bastards. Rebuild the alliance like our ancestors did." His words, fused with the flow's power coursing through him and Lyra, silenced the council, the air thick with tension. A leader advanced, taller than the rest, core blazing like a small sun, eyes piercing them like spears. "You've proven what none believed," he said, voice deep as an earthquake's rumble. "A human and a Klytheran, forged as one. But peace takes time and sacrifice." He fixed them with a stare, unyielding. "You'll stay here, bridging our kinds, until trust grows, until wounds heal." Ethan nodded, slow and certain, knowing the cost, knowing he'd never see Earth's blue skies or childhood fields again. He looked at Lyra, saw love and resolve in her gaze, and knew he wasn't alone. "I'm in," he rasped, voice steady. "But one condition: Earth gets the truth. No more secrets, no more lies." The council paused, then the leader inclined his head, a solemn agreement, and the portal behind them rumbled shut, purple light fading, leaving Ethan and Lyra on Klythera, in a strange world now their home. Time blurred, days, months, maybe years. Ethan stopped counting. They became symbols of peace, standing between species, teaching them to see allies, not enemies. But one day, atop a high Klytheran hill, gazing at the star-strewn sky, a new signal pulsed from the void, stronger, darker than anything before, a warning from the abyss. Ethan gripped Lyra's hand, her cores beat matching his, and knew their fight wasn't done just opening a new chapter. Ready? He asked, smirking, a challenge in his eyes. Always, she replied, their cores flaring bright, blue light spilling forth like a promise. Together, they stepped forward, unyielding among the stars, facing the new shadow creeping closer.